Most things that we use on a day-to-day basis come from agriculture, whether it's the cereal in the bowl next to me, the rice milk that it's floating in, my big cup of coffee, my super comfy pajamas. Agriculture is everywhere. So, why can't we just grow what we need in our backyards and our neighborhoods? Well, we could, but we need to grow a lot of it and pretty quickly. Instead, we tend to rely on intensive agriculture, which uses a large amount of landscape modification to increase crop yields to a level that can meet our day to day needs and demands. In particular, farmers commonly use tilling, slash and burn farming, and fertilizers, as we'll explore today. So let's take a closer look at the cereal in my bowl. Yum! Most of my cereal is composed of grains like barley, corn, and oats, and growing grains usually starts with tilling and good quality soil with lots of nutrients. Tilling is the process of digging, turning, or stirring soil to control weeds and other pests and to prepare the soil for seeding. Tilling can also be really useful for compacted soil as it breaks down the soil into smaller and smaller pieces called soil aggregates and allows for easier crop planting. Now, tillage has been done for thousands of years, but it's changed a lot from the past when we used human labor and big draft animals to till small fields on an annual basis. Now, large-scale farmers use heavy mechanized equipment that can till thousands of acres multiple times per year. While soil tillage can help to loosen and aerate soil, what do you think would happen if heavy machinery passes over the land and tears up the surface multiple times per year? This practice of repeated intensive tilling compacts the lower layers of the soil and loosens the topsoil to the point that it loses the ability to hold water and nutrients. Tillage also reduces any leftover crop residue like plant stalks, so in turn, the exposed soil surface becomes really vulnerable to wind and rain because nothing is really holding the soil down or providing cover. This, in turn, can cause soil to collect and surface runoff and soil loss through erosion. When this happens, soil, organic matter, and nutrients are literally washed or blown away. Low-till or no-till farming alternatives can mitigate some of these problems. In the Palouse, a major agricultural area in the western United States where lots of grains are grown, just like the ones in my cereal, no-till farming is especially important because the fields are, well, they're very steep and hilly, and wind and rain can cause a lot of erosion when the soil is heavily tilled. By not tilling the fields, farmers can prevent soil erosion. But wait, cereal isn't complete without milk. I personally like rice milk because I'm lactose sensitive, and rice is commonly grown in temperate and tropical regions, oftentimes in areas where soil quality might be lacking. So, how do farmers get nutrients back into the soil? Well, they often use slash and burn farming. Like the name, forest plots are slashed or cut, left to dry, and then burned. The ash left over from the burning fertilizes the soil, but it's only a temporary benefit. After about 3 to 5 years, the productivity of slashed and burned plots goes down really quickly due to the loss of nutrients and as weeds start to grow again. When this happens, farmers abandon the field, move over to a new area, and repeat the process. But it can take decades for these plots to recover once they've been slashed, burned, and farmed, and this practice can become a vicious cycle. In the Amazon, for example, people in rural areas rely on slash and burn so that they can make money selling the crops they grow. In the process, thousands of acres are burned each year. As these trees and plants burn, enormous amounts of greenhouse gases, mainly carbon dioxide, are produced, which contributes to global climate change. And sometimes, too, fires may not be well managed and can burn out of control, causing huge, costly wildfires. There are, however, alternatives to slash and burn, which includes applying animal fertilizer on used plots to bring nutrients back to the soil or using alley cropping. Alright, so as I'm sitting here eating and thinking about my breakfast, I'm relaxing in my pajamas, which are made from cotton. And cotton is actually quite a tricky crop to produce since it requires a lot of fertilizers. In fact, for every 9 ounces of cotton, the average amount in a t-shirt, growers use about 17 teaspoons of chemical fertilizers. When the human population was much smaller, hundreds of years ago, there was little harm in using natural fertilizers to replenish or increase nutrients in the soil and promote plant growth. Natural fertilizers meant farmers used things like leftover crops, manure, wood ash, ground bones, fish or fish parts, and even bird and bat poop. In the early 1800s, though, scientists discovered that nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium were key to plant growth, and in time, many farmers began to switch from natural fertilizers to artificial fertilizers with higher concentrations of these nutrients, which greatly increased crop yields. However, now that farmers are growing more crops than any time in history, we've learned that there are impacts to using large amounts of very concentrated fertilizers. Applying too much fertilizer can pollute runoff water with excess fertilizer and pollution of local surface waters. As nutrient rich materials, like fertilizer, make their way into nearby rivers, lakes, and oceans, they can cause major problems in the balance of nutrients in marine ecosystems. When too many nutrients from fertilizers saturate a body of water, called eutrophication, these nutrients can feed the rapid growth of algae. In turn, these massive algae blooms can eventually lead to huge fish die-offs called dead zones. To reduce the amount of nutrients released into waterways, farmers can limit the amount of fertilizer that they apply or use compost as a fertilizer, which is decomposed organic material and tends to have lower and safer levels of nitrates and phosphates. Now to enjoy a good cup of coffee. So, the next time you wake up in the morning and fix yourself a bowl of cereal with milk, you'll have a better understanding of how those foods were produced and some of the impacts associated with industrial agriculture.